What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another post-game initial reactions video. Today, we are here to dive into the Lions' 34-17 win over the Chicago Bears. This is my initial reactions before I rewatch the game, so let's get it started. Welcome, everybody, to a video. Glad you guys are here, and yes, we're back with an initial reactions video. Now, I told you guys this morning in our pregame show that I would be dialing back a little bit on the upcoming preview videos, like for the next game, because right now, the way that I put those together, or even the live streams that we did like this past weekend, that was like 2 hours, it just takes a long time to prepare for those. It takes days to prepare for those and watching the other teams. So I'm going to start pulling back, still do those in some sense, but pulling back a little bit probably for the rest of the season, depending on the support of each video, and instead leaning more into recapping the previous game. Now, again, this is before I've rewatched it, so we're not really breaking down that much in today's video. It's just kind of what I saw, the eye test, and then we'll focus on more of that through the early portions of the week. Just going forward, I just think for support reasons, it's better. We can highlight certain players. I just think it makes more sense at this point. I love doing the deep dive preview breakdowns. We see some things before they happen because of it, but it just takes too dang long. 17-point victory over the Chicago Bears, man. And we're going to start right from jump here with what I think this was for the Lions. This was getting back to who the Detroit Lions are. What makes the Lions so dangerous, what makes them such a tough out for everybody, is exactly the way that they played today. And both sides of the ball in terms of they essentially took the run game out of the opponent's hands. Now, Swift didn't run that efficiently anyways, 9 carries, 20 yards. It wasn't great, but we also kind of pulled it away from them a little bit because their first touchdown drive, they actually didn't run the ball horribly. They just were kind of forced to get away from it. And then on the flip side, we ran the ball incredibly well. Over 100 yards for Jahmyr Gibbs as the guy. I think only once, I could be wrong, once in his career, he's even had 25 plus touches in a game. He had 27 in this game between rushing the football and pass catching, and he was electric from start to finish. He was efficient, showed up in the goal line spot, got us into the end zone, even though the run before that wasn't fantastic. This guy was outstanding. The move that he put on Kyler Gordon, and I think that those two things are what the Lions have consistently been to get to the spot of, man, they are a tough out. For the last few weeks, the Lions began to pull back a little bit in terms of some of the success they've had rushing the football. Similarly, like the Buffalo Bills to us, they kind of forced us out of that game, but just in terms of being consistent as a rushing team, we just lost a little bit of that. And today we found that once again. And I got to give credit immediately to Christian Mahogany. Like, the entire offensive line seemingly played really well. Frank Ragnow was the guy that I was really keeping my eye on because I thought that in the interior, even though they didn't have Javon Dexter, which clearly was important, I thought that they had some dudes that have been showing up. And if you go back and watch that Minnesota game, Cowart was outstanding. Chris Williams has been good for them. Ford's been a nice little spot piece. They've had guys that have showed up. They still have Montez Sweat on the edge. Wes Walker, they still have dudes on that defensive line. They have a nice linebacking core between Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds and Kyler Gordon kind of in those nickel sets. The Lions didn't lean incredibly heavily into, hey, we're going jumbo package. They did it occasionally, but they left Kyler Gordon on the field, a lot of 12 personnel, a lot of simplifying things offensively, and just creating movement. I thought they did it in a lot of versatile ways. There was a lot of different schemes that were utilized to run the football seemingly in this game. And a lot of the plays seemingly got to the second level, very, very similarly to the last time we played Chicago. The ability to get to the linebackers, and today we saw it with the receiver movement pre-snap to help with that, and we had a couple of plays with like some throwback screens where we had a lot of movement pre-snap, the counter runs to hold these backers with some of the gap scheme as well, and then again, just the offensive line leaning behind Zeitler, who played excellent last time we played Chicago, Mahogany stepping in, and then the stretch plays to get wide, and so many of these plays that Jahmyr Gibbs would just bounce off the tight ends who were sealing a great edge and working at these edge rushers where Darrell Taylor's not a great run defender, working at these edge defenders and then just kicking off outside of that. Gibbs adds that element that is just unique because he hits the corner so fast that just other backs don't have. And with how well our tight ends have been blocking over the last few weeks, Laporta, Brock Wright at fullback, specifically guys like Laporta, with how well they've been blocking, the ability to lean on those pieces. And I got to go back to Christian Mahogany stepping in for Graham Glasgow. That was probably the one, like, okay, how is this going to look? Because we haven't seen the guy. And I'm not going to sit here and act like I know that Mahogany was fantastic or that one play because I got to rewatch it, but I can say that, man, they produced on the ground. They were effective on the ground constantly in this game. And I can't really go back and find many notes where I have like Mahogany. That was clearly a loss there. I actually have in some of my notes that Mahogany was the guy that kind of paved the way. We see him out on the screen. Mainly we saw Kevin Zeitler out there and Frank Ragnow like a semi-truck just pushing guys over, but that offensive line showed up. The pass protection was fantastic. First down efficiency. Like on the offensive side of the ball, the Lions were as good as it gets on first down. Running the ball, passing the ball. So let's go back to the preview for a second. One thing that I had noted in my preview was like, okay, I think the Lions are going to be able to run the football. But I do believe that throwing the ball on first down is a good idea. I think that's a good idea. I think it simplifies their coverage. And whenever they're in two deep safeties, I think it's very difficult to find consistent success passing the football. Even go to last time we played Chicago, it can be a little bit tricky. And then all of a sudden, their pass rush starts to wake up a little bit once you fall behind the chains. So I had no issue with throwing on first down. I thought you could simplify things. And if we go back to this first half, every seemingly big play that they had was 1st and 10, simplified looks, cover 3, and a cover 3 beater. It was just that simple. We got them into looks that we could anticipate what we were going to get, and then we were able to find an easier answer off of that. Pass protection being off of play action, our pass protection was great in those spots, and the flip side is we also ran the ball incredibly well on first down. So they had a balance where it wasn't just that we're throwing on first down and that allowed Chicago to be like, you know what, let's change up our coverage. No, they also ran the ball on first down really well. So it did force Chicago to have to give real respect to that, even to the play, which is going to get the attention, which it should, but the fake fumble kind of thing where it's like Goff is stumbling, Gibbs kind of falls down. Someone in the Bleacher Report chat said that Dan Campbell was yelling fumble, which is amazing. Even that play, the leak route to Sam Laporta, which was a route that we've ran before. It was a route that we've tried this year. It was a touchdown that we scored against Arizona in 2021 at St. Brown in a similar part of the field. It was a simplified cover 3 look, and all the Lions' little wrinkle to that, which is what they're about. It's why I love this coaching staff. It's why I'm confident in any game that we go into, home, road, I don't care. Heck, we're 7-0 on the road. Put us against anybody in the playoffs. I trust this coaching staff's going to have a really good plan. Now, we'll see if we execute to it, but you're going to be hard pressed to find a game where we go in and I'm like, I don't think we were prepared for that one. You may get glimpses, you may get quarters, but the Lions will adapt, they'll find a way, and even going back to Buffalo, as rough as it was, a lot of it was execution and mistakes, and it was also like, hey, we were in some good plays, we just didn't execute, but also we made adjustments throughout that game. And I think in this game, when you see a play like that, it's the wrinkle added to kind of a very not basic, but very understandable play. Like, there was not much crazy with the pass concept, right? You use Jameson Williams, he pulls out the deep third corner. Then you run the leak route from the opposite side. You chip, and then he leaks out into the wheel route. And that flat defender on the play, all the Lions had to do, Jonathan Owens, I believe it was the safety, had to keep his eyes in the backfield. And with the fake fumble, they kept his eyes in the backfield. A lot of times you can trust the play action to do that and roll the opposite way. This time, all they did was fake the fumble, keep his eyes down there. Same thing with a guy like TJ Edwards, so he can't bail out and find it. Keep the respect there, and then all of a sudden, because, and again, this is a great wrinkle because the Lions know that, hey, this is a very smart coverage team. Like, we were doing our if you watched the live stream preview, and I appreciate you if you did. If you watched it on Saturday morning, we talked about how Chicago is a very smart coverage team. They have a lot of smart players. It's what's given us so many issues in Chicago in the past. Their linebackers are smart. They play fast. It's tough to deal with those guys. And they're so smart because they don't typically just break down in coverage. Like, you're going to have to find ways to essentially pull them out of the play and use their intelligence as players against them. And this was a great example of that in a sense of like, hey, we're just completely taking their attention away from this. And it was a little wrinkle that was probably necessary for this team, but the concept was nothing special. It was, we got cover 3, we're running a leak route, bam, it's a touchdown. And the execution was there. The pass protection was fantastic. That is the recipe that the Lions leaned on into this game, and they found constant success. And when you can run the ball like they can, being able to throw the ball on first down becomes even easier. And then I would also say, because the Lions did, they simplified the heck out of this coverage for Chicago, and that was a problem all game long. We even saw in some of the third downs when it wasn't like that, we've got into some trouble at times. We didn't convert on the fourth down, right? We had some that we left on the field at the end. It happened. Even before half, they knew we were throwing the ball. It was hard to move the football. They covered Tim Patrick on the dig route. It became Sione Vaki show. Check it down, get us some field goal range. Trying to hit St. Brown. It was a tight window. He had to kind of snag down, pull back. So the Lions took what makes them so special out of the game and made them kind of have to simplify everything so that the Lions could work and attack them over and over. And that's what Ben Johnson has been really so good at. That's what he's so good at. And we saw that exactly play out in this game. We'll go through some specific examples. I also got to give a shout out to Jameson Williams when we're talking about offense, because this goes back to last time we played Chicago. Jameson Williams, last time we played Chicago, I don't think he had a monstrous stat line, but it was like okay, who's going to go win on the outside 101? The answer was Jameson Williams. And to me, that's what's given us a problem against Chicago in the past is, especially if you can't dominate on the ground game and they're taking that away, which they had in the past, you have to have a guy that can win outside. Because even if you're getting cover 3, but you can't win outside consistently, now the middle field becomes everything. Things get a little bit clogged up, and it's difficult to find answers. Jameson Williams, even go back to when we played Tampa Bay early in the season, when they were funneling everything inside and kind of pressing us to play inside, Chicago does the same thing. They do the same thing. They funnel you back to their backers that play with great depth. They funnel you back to their safeties in the inside, and they make everything tight windows on the interior. Well, in this game, just like last time we played Chicago, when he kind of started it that way, Jameson Williams has been an answer where it's like, I can go win one-on-one outside. So you don't have, this isn't a great decision. And the Lions, when they go 12 personnel, they put 2 tight ends and St. Brown and J-Mo, both of those guys can go win on the outside. So when you have both those guys that can go win on the outside one-on-one, you got something. And especially against a team like this where Chicago has a very good corner in Jalen Johnson that's usually going to see St. Brown, so that's still not a great matchup. And then on the opposite side, they have Terrell Smith or Tyreek Stevenson. You go at that guy. You go at him all the time. And the Lions did exactly that. They did it on the 82-yard touchdown where he passed it to the safety. They did it early in this game. They did it to the point where J-Mo had a taunting call, even though we don't love that. And I'm glad that, he wasn't out for the rest of the game, but kind of last time because it was so early and that we responded off of it because it was off a first down. So at least it wasn't like 2nd and 20. But the point is that his ability to be the answer in those spots is, to me, as well as Tim Patrick in spots. Laporta obviously can play out there, but just him specifically is one thing that's probably makes this offense so different from years prior. It's probably one of the biggest elements that changes everything. We may have to do somewhat of a breakdown on this because it's not the same team. It's so hard, I think, now as a defense because, yeah, he's the vertical threat, take the top off, that kind of thing. We see that where it's at the point now where if Goff sees that the safety hasn't already turned his back and took off, that ball's going up. He did the same thing to Bills, and it went through his hands. It wasn't like he was already behind the Bills safety and Goff decided, I'm going to take a shot. The Bills safety was just looking at Goff. He hadn't turned around yet, but he was on top of J-Mo. Goff's like, yep, he hasn't turned around. I'm going over top. And he put it on him. 2 beautiful deliveries in back-to-back weeks, by the way. But he obviously has that, but then he also has that, I'm going to go win one-on-one. And it's your number 2 corner. He's not great because nobody wants to put Saint on whoever their number 2 is very often, and there's not a lot of teams with 2 great corners, and we're seeing right now that has changed so much life for the Lions. This is why I say I think this is the Lions, by far, this is their hands down their best passing attack that I've ever seen. And the pass pro over the last few weeks has been money. I thought last week was a huge step in the right direction against the Bills, against all the stunts and the games when they knew you were passing, and then this week, it was outstanding. And a lot of that was situationally because of the spots they were able to put themselves in, but it was outstanding. And that's what the Lions have now put together. And to me, this is the most dangerous passing attack they've ever had under this regime. And I think we're seeing that play out where in the past, in Chicago, on the road, it's cold. Yeah, it wasn't rainy, but you're like, I don't know. 34 points, 330 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's what you did against that defense? This doesn't even look like the same passing team. And a lot of that, I think, is Jameson Williams. Now, again, schematically, we're a super smart team, and when you can run the ball like that, have a problem on the other side. But let's continue. Let's flip to the defense now, because this was a lot of new pieces, kind of like, okay, not new pieces, but changes. Starting in the back end, we made changes of Amik went back to wide, which was cool because I think that Amik Robertson at wide corner is the best secondary I think that we could put on the field. I would have loved to see Mosley. We'll see if that happens at any point. But the truth is knowing what we have and knowing what we have in our guys, putting Amik Robertson on the outside makes our secondary better than it was last year in the playoffs. Like, to me, objectively, it's hands down better than it was last year. Because now, where last year it was Vildor out wide, right, and it was Brian Branch in the slot, and it was still iffy, and it was still Kirby Joseph at safety, have like Cam Sutton out wide. The only real area where I think at times that was better is communication, because last week was kind of messy against Buffalo there. And Terrion is clearly still a work in progress, and when he was matched up on Keenan, that was a problem at times today. But honestly, he gave problems to everybody. Brian Branch, it didn't matter who matched up, and there was problems. But when you put Amik out wide, so you got Amik out wide, Branch in the slot, and you got Terrion out wide, who I think is just continuing to get better and better. Even the slant that he was beat on, like he was in the play. There's a deep shot that was thrown over his head that if it was thrown close to the receiver, it's probably picked off. He had a great pass break on the back of the end zone. He's not perfect, but I think he's getting there in just terms of being able to match up one-on-one. When you make that your secondary versus last year's, that's a better secondary than it was in last year's playoffs. So, like, all the talk about, like, man, how much are we missing all this thing? Like, that's why I'm saying it gets overblown. This is a better secondary. If Alex gets back, it's basically the same linebacker core that you've rolled with a much better Jack Campbell than he was last year. And in this game, speaking of that, how about the Lions' second level? The Lions changing it up, rolling Ben Neiman heavily, Trevor Nowaski back at Sam. It's always great to have that rather than a guy like Quan Alexander, or really David Long, who played a majority of the snaps last week. They went with Ben Neiman, who's sound. He's very controlled in coverage. They clearly were like, hey, we're going to some zone coverage drops, and we trust Ben Neiman in those spots, so they roll with Ben Neiman, and obviously he's a very good tackler as well, so they let those two guys kind of handle that. And then the defensive line even saw some movement as well, because you had guys like Levi kicking in at times in this game, but specifically the second and third levels, there's a lot of movement. and a guy like Iffy to immediately step in, the Lions were wasting no time. They're like, yeah, you know what? We're going to do what Iffy does well. We're going to blitz him. So you got Iffy blitzing left or right. I mean, the first possession, he blitzes twice, gets him off the field. It's a 3 and out. So you have that. Branch in the slot. It's amazing because I love watching him blitz. Like, yeah, he'll get beat at times. He doesn't have some of the length at the catch point that other guys do, but he is a fantastic blitzer. At any time he's near the ball, he makes the tackle. Like, he's at that point where it's like, if he's like on the screen and the guy has it, you're like, hey, he's probably going to tackle him. He's probably not breaking that tackle. And that's usually what happens. But now you throw Meek into that mix. This guy that's been having to rep the slot position, kicks out wide. He doesn't miss tackles either. He missed like one today where it was like a broken tackle, they pick up 2 yards. He shut everything down that got bounced. And the thing is, with that run game, it wasn't just about the front. Chicago's run game has come to life so much because of what they've done wide. It's whether that's a wide rushing scheme, which they've heavily leaned into, which we saw again today, the usage of the receivers in the run scheme, which we saw again today. We saw the end arounds, we saw the jets, we saw the sweeps, we saw the getting wide. It kind of played them once because Rome fumbled it, but that's been a used usage. They put DJ Moore at the running back position at times, and then it's also just simply what DeAndre Swift has done as a cutback running back, getting out wide, getting things very wide. Inside zone, great, I'm going to bounce it out and turn the corner. Amik Robertson, every time the ball went his direction, was like, that ain't going to happen. You're not going nowhere. It was like, yeah, 1 yard. Incredible. Like, it was incredible. This was a great example of, like, defensive backs' importance in run support. And I think there's a lot of teams that have electric running backs that it is that. And DeAndre Swift, who has been really good recently, who I thought had just played incredible against Minnesota. And he's looked really good this year. He didn't look bad in this game. He kind of pulled him out of it. But 9 carries for 20 yards. A lot of that comes back to the cornerback position for just not letting those things hit the edge. So shout out to that. If he looked like he'd never, he hadn't missed any time. He was just in there communicating defensively. Lions are going to inverted. Tampa 2 looks at the end. It's just like this guy has not missed a beat. He looks the exact same guy that you would expect. Obviously, Kirby's fantastic. The goal line play where he steps underneath, he's been really good in those spots. But that adjustment, Amik to me has an argument for player of the game just from initial live watch. And to me, that secondary is better than it was last season. So I'm super hyped about what that could be turning into. And then from a pressure perspective, it didn't seem like we got a ton of pressure, at least until they really got towards the end. There was like stretches of pressure. I don't know, though. I have to kind of look back on that. Za'darius came through a little bit late. I know O'Connor made some impact plays. It was nice to see Pittman get in towards the end a little bit just to see him on the defensive side of the ball because I think he can add something there, but that'll have to pay more attention to. It's really difficult for Trenches, I think, to pick up live how it was unless you're just like looking at sacks. Offensively, I love what they did in this game in terms of just trusting run after catch. Like we said in this game, it was like, hey, I mean, this is like the perfect example. In the preview video, I can throw the graphic on the screen. I said, make this team prove they can tackle in space. And we showed 2 plays where Minnesota picked up 3rd and forever just because they did not make a tackle. They played the sticks. They set down on the sticks. It's hard to throw to the sticks against Chicago when it's 3rd and long. And what did the Lions do on 3rd and long? Extended play, check it to St. Brown, gives hits a block, 3rd and 14. Yeah, we'll pick it up. I think it was 3rd and 14. They trusted that element. They did exactly that. They did exactly what they had to do in terms of like, okay, prove you can go tackle that guy. Laporta got going. Jahmyr Gibbs on the screen right after the fumble, which was excellent blocking downfield. They did that from jump. St. Brown, it was like, hey, make them prove that they can actually tackle us and get us out the field. Make them earn it. Don't just force something into a tight window because they're all dropped back. Make them earn it. And the Lions in this game, the guys that they have, the playmakers they have with the ball in their hands, a lot of times it was like, yeah, you can't. You know what I mean? Even the J-Mo play where he literally crossed the entire field was like something you would see in high school. And then obviously to that, Jared Goff, like throwing on first down again, simplified coverage. It's the same thing. You get that little like hitch route that you run the J-Mo. It's cover 3. They're seemingly showing a blitz. So you got one less underneath defender. You run a stick concept. He goes to the flat. Montez Sweat's some block, fakes it, hits J-Mo, and he takes off. Make them tackle. For Chicago's side, I think they did a lot of things that we've seen, passing the football, the receiver runs, getting the ball in their hands fast, the screen play specifically, they lean into a lot of that, and at times it could have been dangerous. One of the biggest swing plays of this game will be simply the fumble. It'll be that the Lions came out aggressive, they were blitzing, and the downside of that is there's a huge negative if they complete that screen. And a couple of times it was incomplete, but one that they did complete where it was ultimately punched out about midfield where they seemingly had something going offensively that turned immediately into like, hey, there's more Lions points. That's going to be one of the biggest swing plays of this game. I believe it was Mitchell Agude, and it was also Brian Branch getting in on that forced fumble. We're kind of doing what they had been doing. And then again, offensively, it's Jamison Williams, a 17-yard over route. Just like, hey, I can go win one-on-one. Defensive side of the ball. How about what we did in terms of after what happened last week? I mean, what's given us a problem this year is broken plays. To me, it's not just the quarterback running. It's the broken plays. It's where a play extends and it gets beyond what you play call. Because we have an incredible defensive coach. I trust this against anybody because I know we're going to come with the game plan that's like, yeah, we gave ourselves a chance. That Bills game, Don't get on Aaron Glenn for that. We were in a lot of good plays defensively, and it becomes a broken play, and either the back end doesn't plaster, or the front lets him lose his contain completely, or we missed a tackle out in space, which we did again today. Ben Neiman missed one, just like Turner did last week. It's that, but we were in a lot of good spots where it's like, hey, we got him here. You know, we showed man, we went zone. We did exactly what you should have did against Buffalo. We showed man, went zone. Showed man, went zone in the first 2 third-down plays, which is exactly what we have to do because, like we said in the preview for that video, that's what they do. That's what they do. They're going to have man beaters because they know we're going to be playing in man. So Lions went zone, and they were out of sorts except for turn into broken plays, and guys are open. Not because of anything special they did, because they didn't plaster the back end. Terrion Arnold wasn't plastering in the back end, and I got to be honest, I can't see what Terrion's doing all the time. But I'll tell you what, how many times in this game did you walk away like, oh, that was a broken play that someone got wide open downfield? Not often, maybe a few times. There was a couple that I know that were actually like on script where it was like, okay, defensive player missed on the sack, so he still got the ball off to where he was throwing, but there wasn't a ton of examples of like broken play. Everything's broken down. Now here's somebody wide open for 100 yards. That didn't happen. It happened over and over against the Bills. Think about Tampa Bay when they beat us. People want to go back to that game. Yeah, they beat us, but they had no efficiency offensively. It wasn't like Tampa was out there diming us up. They had one coverage beater just like we did today, and then at that point, it was all broken plays. You remember Baker juked out Malcolm Rodriguez? That's all it was. He just kept extending the play. At that point, coverage doesn't really matter at that point. Just find somebody, and we gave up plays. Today, between the contain up front, the consistency there with Levi and how those guys handled it with the stunts and Smith, but then also then at the back end, much better job plastering. Amik Robertson constantly late on plays, the safety position. Like, they did a much better job. I mean, the big plays we gave up a lot of times were on schedule. It was the big shot play on Terrion. It's a double move. That wasn't off script. It's a double move. I think he was in some quarters look. I haven't watched it back. And he gives a double move because he bites underneath. He can't do that. The safety can't get over there in time. So he gives it a big play. That's not a broken play. That's within the play. But when they become broken plays, this is giving us trouble. And the Lions handle that much better, which was a great adjustment and a step forward in terms of going from Buffalo to Chicago. And I know it's happened a few times this year, but I feel like there's been examples like that, but this was a great one of you played a team that gave you problems in one way. It's excellent that you get to play a team that does a lot of similar things the very next week, because a lot of things that we did against Chicago the first time we played Chicago on defense, we also did against Buffalo. So I'm assuming that we were going to be able to carry that over to this game with a few wrinkles in there, but being aggressive was absolutely one of those wrinkles that carried over into this game. Chicago has guys that can win. Like, that's true. Like, Caleb can make guys miss on sacks. They got a lot of receivers that can win. Roma Dunze made some ridiculous grabs. Keenan Allen just feels unguardable at times. It's like, yeah, you're on him, but if it's a well-thrown ball, he's just going to go find a way to make the play. And at times, a lot of it was that. Like, their third down conversions were a 3rd and 8, Roma Dunze. Brian Branch on a 4th down and 3. Sometimes they just had guys that would go win in this game, and that just kind of is what it is, right? They got dudes, and that's why a lot of people thought Chicago would be pretty darn good this year, because they have that kind of talent. They just are a little bit messy, and we saw that toward the end. Like, I don't know what they're doing. They end up playing football. That's the reason they're not winning more football games. That's a big reason. But then also, again, last note really to the Lions offense side of the ball, I love the offensive schematic plan. I love the fact that they came out again, just like last time, they used end arounds and jets immediately from jump, just to at least show it. You know, you got that beneath pattern to Jamison Williams that picked up 14 yards, just trusting his speed, which is actually very similar to what Chicago did with us just a little bit earlier, where they got the beneath route, our linebackers a little bit late, and they got onto the flat. That'll be one thing defensively that you still want improvement. Red zone, sandbackers, not being late into the flat, stop giving up boot flats inside the 10-yard line. One thing that we did was we won the turnover battle. Outside of the 4th down at the end, like, we took advantage of the Bears, who made some bad mistakes, 2 bad fumbles, and the one thing that I think that we left out there was the field goal before half. I don't know that he would have made it, but having Hogan Hatton called for a penalty that makes it from 60 to 65 yards to leave 3 points on the field is tough, because that was a potential opportunity for a swing where you get those 3 going into half, and they did come out and score a touchdown immediately in the second half, which again, 25 yards to start the second half. Guess what? On 1st down. That's when the Lions threw the football. That's when it was successful. And then, of course, they scored the touchdown on what? Sam Laporta, the leak route on 1st and 10. I'm very glad that Sione Vaki started to get some looks in this game. That was awesome. Craig got some touches. And I look forward to seeing those roles kind of expand a little bit. Jermar Jefferson, my man, it's about darn time. And he looked good, man. He finished the deal off. So this was a great win. This was a great win. It wasn't perfect. We had 7 penalties. Some of them were on deep. A lot of them were on defense, it felt like. They had 10, so they made more mistakes than we did. It felt like we were the home team with them the crowd chanting. They're making more mistakes, that kind of deal. But it wasn't perfect. It wasn't super clean. But what it was is the Lions getting back to the identity of what makes them so tough. And they did exactly that in this game. And then also they just had some great performances. And the coaching staff continues to be excellent. So I'm going to leave it there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. The Lions are now 13-2. By the time you're seeing this, Seattle Vikings, I don't know where it's at in the game, but I know Philly lost, and we have an opportunity now next week potentially to clinch the 1 seed, but specifically, we gave ourselves a little bit of a gap between Philly because they're probably not going to lose the game anymore. So, Lions, everything in front of them. They control their own destiny, and I'm fired up to see how these last 2 games played out. San Fran next. I'm going to leave it there. Let me know your thoughts, comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.